Many times people think they can't lose weight due to excessive cortisol. This can cause many problems, but when you are fasting, it negates the negative effects of cortisol. While it may surprise you, it is often the liver that holds you back when it comes to losing weight. And while your doctor won't tell you you have a liver issue or excessive cortisol unless it's severe, it is fairly easy to spot because it tends to lead to a certain look.
The body is round.
Before I get into things, there's a new quote-unquote feature in YouTube audio that does some compression on the sound that makes it sound awful. I think that is why a few people complained of bad audio. If you're having audio issues, try turning this off first. And the next thing to do is try adjusting your treble and your bass, because many times people have very tinny videos, and if you adjust it to listen to these videos and then you listen to something that has proper audio, like my videos usually do, then it's not going to work out. I also have a fried voice from mild heat stroke issues, and I have the air conditioner blaring, so the sound quality may not be great today regardless. There's a saying that you can't outrun a bad diet, and this is very true. In fact, if you try, eventually your body will react to the stimulus and stop burning as many calories. You may think that movement is the main place that caloric energy is spent, but in fact, it's almost totally negligible. It's really cellular metabolism combined with excess heat energy. That's where all of your energy is going. Movement requires almost no calories, even for running, and we can calculate this to the nth degree, and even an 800-pound deadlift is only a couple of calories burned as far as mechanical energy goes. When they measure the so-called calories burned in exercising, what they actually do is they set up monitors to see how much heat you're producing. But this is very misleading because the more heat you produce, the more the body stops producing heat. This is controlled by the body, and the more often you exercise, the less waste heat is going to be generated over time because less is needed to maintain your body temperature. Exercise has many benefits, but grinding away at jogging for long periods to get rid of calories is ultimately going to slow your metabolism and burn lean tissue. Likewise, long periods of dieting will lead to extreme drops in metabolism as your body adjusts to the inputs and tries to keep things stable. The only way to win here is essentially fool the body by alternating eating and fasting. When you fast for 36 to 96 hours, your body does not shut down the metabolism but actually speeds it up. If you eat reasonable levels of carbs the rest of the time, and you don't eat a dozen meals a day, and you get plenty of protein and a good amount of animal fat, then eventually you should lose the weight. Before agriculture, we would sometimes miss a hunt, and the human body is designed for this. However, if we ate reduced amounts of food for long periods, it would signal the body that there was great scarcity and it was time to greatly cut down expenditure and stop growing lean tissue. And this is when you lose lean tissue. That's exactly what dieting does. Fast of 36 to 96 hours will cure nearly all weight loss issues, but if you have some serious problems losing weight, it's possible to not be losing any weight at all even when you're fasting at first. Then it's helpful to know what else is going on and how to fix it. Many people who use the calories in, calories out slogan will blather on and on about calories, but then put in a big exception about thyroid issues. Well, duh. The problem they miss is that if you're morbidly obese, you're also going to have thyroid issues, and you're also going to have SIBO. It's simply unavoidable, and these gut issues just go hand in hand with autoimmune issues. The foods that make us fat, such as bread and other processed foods, tend to have loads of refined carbs in them. Sugar consumption has been steady for some time because finally people are getting it that sugar is bad for you. But carb consumption has gone up and up, especially gut-wrecking processed carbs, and this includes, but is not limited to, bread. We also get less fat and more emulsifiers, meaning the mucus in our diet is not able to protect our gut from damage and microbial colonization. This causes harmful gut bacteria to run wild and crowd out the beneficial bacteria such as L. reuteri and bifidobacterium that are supposed to be there. This leads to SIBO and a leaky gut, and it even makes you absorb more calories. In healthy adults, much of the saturated fat you eat passes right through the body, but when you have a disturbed gut, the pathogenic bacteria will clog up the digestive tract and won't allow it to pass through your body. Prolonged dieting also causes this issue, which seems to account for 25% of the inability of the body to keep weight off after a diet. They've actually found that if they take obese mice and they transplant the microbiome from a healthy mouse into them, they'll lose weight. They've also found with autistic children that if they transplant the microbiome of someone healthy into them, it will lessen their symptoms or even eliminate them. A disturbed gut also tends to increase propionic acid production, which causes symptoms of autism in animal studies. Keep in mind that many baked goods like bread also contain propionate as an ingredient, and they include many emulsifiers. These emulsifiers blend fat and water together, which is terrible for gut health as it breaches the mucosal layer, and this layer protects the gut lining from pathogens and irritants. And there's only a single cell in the gut lining which keeps these pathogens from the rest of the body, and they cause great problems once they get in there. Carrageenan is one such so-called natural ingredient that's an emulsifier that's very strongly linked to ulcerative colitis flare-ups, but there is an endless list of them in packaged foods, including bread and baked goods. Once you have leaky gut, autoimmune disease is inevitable, and that is a large part of why older people tend to become more arthritic, inflamed, and have troubles in the digestive tract. And, you guessed it, why they have more thyroid issues. It also seems to be a contributing factor for many mental illnesses, including depression and autism. When the gut is leaky, proteins and even bacteria that don't belong in the bloodstream can penetrate the gut lining. This leads the body to panic at all of these intruders, making antibodies to mark all of these proteins and all of the other invaders, so that the macrophages and microphages and other phagocytes will devour them. Unfortunately, this process often leads to autoimmune issues, as these antibodies can also cause assaults upon the flesh of your own body. This can affect any part of the body, including the neurons in your brain, and thyroid is one of the most common bystander casualties. This is also the cause of type 1 diabetes, which is highly linked to processed foods like bread during pregnancy.
My pancreas!
As we age, we also tend to lose our T cells, including the Treg cells that lessen the effects of these autoimmune reactions. Thankfully, fasting can do a lot to fix these issues. It kills off these negative bacteria that require carbs to replicate quickly, which they do in order to outcompete other bacteria, but the other positive ones do relatively well while fasting, as they can feed off these dying negative gut bacteria. Fasting 72 plus hours also releases stem cells, which will create new T cells and Treg cells in the thymus. This is critical for immunomodulation of immune reactions, that is, making sure that the autoimmune bystander damage does not occur at high levels. These Treg cells bind to an area like the thyroid or gut and signal the immune system not to attack it. Fasting also causes an increase in growth hormone, which is vital to repairing your thyroid and also your thymus, both of which are very sensitive to it. This also repairs your leaky gut, the gut being the area that responds the most strongly to growth hormone. It also repairs the adrenals, and it will even regenerate other, more sensitive hormone-producing organs.
For these poor devils, it's too late. But there is hope. Here at the Atlanta Genital Institute, teams of doctors are at work around the clock to cure this dreaded affliction.
When insulin is low, cortisol is actually a fat-burning hormone, but it is supposed to turn off when you eat. Cortisol's purpose is to raise blood sugar, but when you have recently eaten, you should not need this. Unfortunately, spiking insulin will also spike cortisol in response because it causes blood sugar to go low. If you eat many times a day, especially from processed or low-fat meals, you will eventually have hypercortisolemia, which causes very serious problems in the body. A round belly and stick-like limbs are good indicators. It often also leads to a moon face. This can have underlying medical causes, but a bad diet will mimic these effects. Thankfully, fasting dramatically reduces insulin and gets things quickly back to normal. Over time, the growth hormone from fasting will repair the damage it's caused. Fasting is amazing at repairing your organs. Not only does it kill off negative gut bacteria and repair your leaky gut, which is the main source of autoimmune reactions, but it even regenerates your thymus and produces new stem cells to create new T cells. There's a big problem though. It's your liver that activates growth hormone, and if it can't do this properly, you can't do all these wonderful things either, and this is why some people initially don't get amazing results fasting. It may take several fasts before you realize that you're suddenly getting much healthier. This is one of the main reasons that PED users can become unable to regenerate their own testosterone over long-term use. Not only does it atrophy those intimate hormone-producing organs, but it usually causes massive liver problems, so you can't regenerate them after you stop. The typical high-carb bodybuilding diet is also highly destructive to the liver, especially rice, which contains large amounts of liver-destroying arsenic. This is a 1-2 combination punch that is very difficult to overcome, and if these guys ever do come off for good, they usually end up looking even smaller than they did before they started, and that's why they usually just stay on TRT, quote unquote. As men age, this can also become an issue without these kinds of interventions, especially if a typical modern high-carb diet is being followed. And you don't have to be 50 or 60 for this to happen. It can happen much sooner if your diet is terrible. And keep in mind, it can also happen from tumors. But if you want to find out why that happens, you can just go look at my past videos. And suffice to say that a low-carb diet and some fasting is the way to both prevent and lessen the effects of these kinds of problems. Fasting can not only repair or prevent these issues, but it also has amazing effects in repairing the liver. And when you hear about autophagy in fasting studies, they're almost always talking about liver autophagy, not just because it's easier to measure, but because that's the most important kind, because your liver is what dictates the health of your whole body. That's what drives your metabolic health, and without it, you're in a lot of trouble, and especially when it comes to the fact that you can't regenerate your organs at all.
Even if the liver is insulin resistant, insulin can still stimulate lipogenesis. In contrast, in the insulin-resistant liver, insulin is less able to make glycogen, so it's less able to tell the liver to store glucose. And this loss of stimulating glycogenesis means we have a reduction. We actually end up, insulin loses its ability to prevent the breakdown of glycogen. So now we have glycogenolysis. This event is disrupted in insulin resistance. And so now we have a liver that is supposed to be holding on to glucose. It's actually letting it go. But it's not supposed to. Remember, that's the pathology here. Insulin is trying to stimulate, or it ought to be stimulating glucose uptake and storage. It's not working anymore. So the liver doesn't get the signal not to break down glycogen, and so it does. It's not being inhibited, the glycogenolysis. And this, of course, drives up blood glucose levels. So once again, if we look at this paradigm of the progression towards full-blown type 2 diabetes, with the liver being insulin resistant, we've pushed that a little further down the road. The patient has progressed a little further towards full-blown type 2 diabetes. So they're getting this mounting hyperglycemia.
However, keep in mind when your liver is damaged, this can take a long time to repair. In the meantime, you can't regenerate the rest of your body without growth hormone. You also can't mobilize fat in the liver without choline, which also hinders the rejuvenation of the liver. Unfortunately, supplemental choline is in a form you don't want. It's all synthetic, and it doesn't properly integrate into the cell membranes. So you really need to be sure to include this in your diet. Eggs are the best way to do this if you aren't willing to eat organs such as brain. But various seafood sources can also do it. So if you're just eating only seafood, you're probably going to be good on choline too, just like you will be with taurine and almost everything else. But most people aren't. They're not going to spend $10 a pound for every meal they eat. The supplement TMG or trimethylglycine will also help you a great deal with your liver. This is 3 methyl groups attached to a glycine molecule. The methyl groups can be used by your body to detoxify poisons, repair the liver, or even to create choline to a certain extent. It also provides a bit of glycine, but the amount you get this way is trivial, so don't take this thinking that you're getting your glycine supplement for the day, because you really need grams and grams of the stuff unless you're eating tons of broth all the time. Without methyl groups, your liver cannot mobilize liver fat and it can't properly heal itself. Your body naturally gets methyl groups from choline, which is high in eggs and some organ meats, but the part an adult human needs from choline is really just the methyl groups for the most part. The artificial forms of choline are inferior and also contain fewer methyl groups per gram, so TMG is a much better supplement for adults. I take 1 gram of TMG a day, but you can take up to 3 a day if you have liver issues or if you're having a lot of trouble losing weight. And this is the first supplement to start taking if you're having trouble with weight loss. You also should try to get plenty of natural choline in the diet as well, as this is needed for cell membrane and brain development. Most people don't need it and it's expensive, but you can also take TUDCA, which is a very effective liver supplement. That's good for liver issues, and it's even used in the hospital for liver failure. Milk thistle is also very helpful for the liver, and it's much cheaper than TUDCA. Taurine is also very cheap, and it also helps a lot with the liver, especially with liver fibrosis, or for any kind of fibrosis for that matter, which just means scarring. And I actually had taurine help a great deal with some old burn marks I had. And that's something I totally didn't expect. And I'm also not the only one. A lot of people on the channel have informed me that they had a similar experience, which I find to be totally amazing. L-cysteine will also help with the liver. In fact, if your liver has issues, basically all of the items in the description are going to help. I would just take them all if you suspect you have liver issues, or if you can't lose weight easily, or if you're waking up in the middle of the night at 3 a.m., or take whatever you can afford. And you do get a better deal by far when you buy the 1 kilogram portions. A lot of times it's even better than the 5 kilogram. But on most of them you can also buy a smaller quantity. That's going to be especially helpful for TUDCA and other more expensive supplements. But for the other ones, I'd probably just get it in the 1 kilogram unless you're really in a bind for money this month. There's 4 main problems when it comes to extremely stuck weight loss. The first is metabolic slowdown as a response to prolonged dieting. The second is thyroid issues. And the third is hypercortisolemia. And the fourth is liver dysfunction, leading to the inability to activate growth hormone, which is critical for regenerating your body. Each of these can be big problems, but you can reduce or eliminate them with some time and effort. And the earlier you attack them, the better result you're liable to have. Your liver can be critical to weight loss and your ability to fast. The worse shape it's in, the harder fasting will be. It will also make your body unable to activate growth hormone, which is critical for the healing process, especially for the thyroid and for other hormonal organs, and for the thymus, which is very important for your health. Thankfully, fasting itself can help. So can dietary choline, along with many supplements like TMG, taurine, milk thistle, and TUDCA. Excess cortisol can be due to autoimmune issues, but it often comes from the diet. And keep in mind, it can also come from extreme exercise regimes, so you really have to be careful about what you do for exercise. I would say that the best things you can do are walking on the slower end, and on the higher end, doing some sprinting. But if you're older, don't sprint. Do the same technique, but apply it to bicycles or exercise machines. So you just do for about 10 to 20 seconds, and then you take it easy for a while, basically walk or light jog. And if you do that for just 10 minutes, you're going to be doing far more than most people are doing for their body. Over time, a high carb diet leads to elevated cortisol and insulin, but fasting very quickly reduces both insulin and chronically high cortisol levels. It also helps a great deal with autoimmune issues, and it leads to regeneration of the adrenals and other important organs once the fast is completed because of the release of growth hormone that's needed for the regeneration. Thyroid issues are also mainly autoimmune in nature and are usually diet related. Fasting in a low carb diet can prevent, improve, or even eliminate these issues.
In addition to low carbohydrates appearing to increase the effectiveness of thyroid hormone, so whatever thyroid hormone you have in your circulation appears to work better on a low carb diet, two foods actually appear to provoke this autoimmune disease. So they did a pilot study of a randomized controlled trial a few years ago now, where they took females with known thyroid disease, Hashimoto's disease. So we detected these antibodies in their blood, the thyroglobulin and the thyroid peroxidase antibodies that was circulating in the blood and attacking the thyroid gland. And they randomized them to two diets. One was the normal diet, just keep eating what you please. And the other group was to go on a gluten-free diet. So gluten, you'll remember, is that kind of thing that we ask celiacs to avoid. It's contained in barley, rye, and wheat. And it won't surprise you to know that the people with celiac disease have a vastly increased risk of Hashimoto's thyroid disease and vice versa. It goes both ways. So they put these people on a gluten-free diet. And then they followed up both groups and they were randomized, which means that all these confounding factors were controlled. So the only difference between them, if there was a difference, would be caused by their dietary intervention. And they found that in the group that continued their normal diet, as I was taught in medical school, these thyroid antibodies just kept on increasing and increasing and increasing. Predictable. But in the group on the gluten-free diet, over a 6-month period, their thyroid antibody levels on average significantly dropped. And this, in my mind, in my knowledge, is the first clear piece of evidence that we can actually intervene with the background pathology of a lot of thyroid disease. Now, it's not all thyroid disease is Hashimoto's, but a lot of it is. A lot of this underactive thyroid, when you ask your doctor what caused it, you'll often just get a blank look and a bit of a shrug. But the fact is, it's not working because it's been destroyed, and almost certainly the cause of that destruction has been an autoimmune process where your body has attacked itself. And we know that cutting out gluten is one strategy that will improve that to some extent.
Your thyroid responds well to growth hormone, and the B cells that create antibodies are lessened by over half from a single 72-hour fast. So one 72-hour fast is going to make you have half of the allergic reaction to something afterwards. It also fixes leaky gut over time, especially when combined with probiotics such as L-reuteri homemade yogurt with bilberry. And these probiotics and also the bilberry will prevent and lessen these autoimmune issues. And bilberry is by far the best source of the polyphenols that do wonderful things for your gut. It even leads to generating new Treg cells over time, which can permanently modulate autoimmune reactions and can potentially end these problems forever. A slow metabolism from years of yo-yo dieting may seem insurmountable, but fasting also helps a great deal here. Your metabolism speeds up by about 10% during the actual fast, when it's between 36 and 96 hours. And when you break the fast, it regenerates your lean tissue, and very importantly, it resets your hormones. A 6-month study of alternate day fasting led to lean tissue gain even with no exercise, while simultaneously losing about 10% of the body weight, all of that being fat. The caloric restriction group, on the other hand, the people that just reduced calories, lost a lot of lean tissue, and they slowed down their metabolism greatly, so they were burning about 300 calories less per day at the end of that. If you can stay on track and don't worry about the day-to-day scale values, then you can reach your goals. Fat loss can be confusing, insanely frustrating, and even frightening, but don't worry, I've got you.
Hey, Jim! Woo!
Excuse me.
That's a bad outfit!
Easy, miss. I've got you.
You've got me! Who's got you?